the lights in the large house gradually dimmed, leaving behind a deep, echoing silence. Barack Obama sat alone on an old sofa, a glass of swirling wine in his hand, but he didn't drink. Outside the window, the Chicago night stretched out, so quiet that he could hear the wind rustling through the trees. For the first time in decades, he was no longer a husband, no longer half of a story once admired by the world. All that remained was him, a man in the twilight of his life, facing an unavoidable loneliness. Divorce was never something he had imagined, let alone desired. But sometimes, even the greatest loves can lose their way. And now, with the door to the past firmly closed, Obama was forced to confront the question, where does a man like him, a man who once reached the pinnacle of power, fought for ideals, and had a family the world admired, go when all of that becomes just a memory? The news spread like wildfire. Barack Obama and Michelle Obama had officially divorced after more than 30 years together. The press didn't need sensational headlines. The truth itself was enough to shake people to their core. Those who admired them were stunned. They had been the symbol of enduring love, a marriage that had weathered every storm, from the early struggles in Chicago to their historic journey into the White House. The image of Barack and Michelle, hand in hand, gazing at each other with pride, had become a beacon of hope for countless couples, especially in the African American community. But now, the unthinkable had happened. Obama made no public statement. There was no emotional speech, no lengthy explanation. Only a rare photo of him, alone, sitting by the window in his spacious home in Washington, D.C., his eyes distant. Michelle, too, remained focused on her work, appearing at events with her familiar smile, but anyone could see it was a tired one. The internet buzzed with questions. What happened? They were so strong, why let go? But amidst the comments and endless analyses, there was a simple truth. Sometimes, even the most beautiful love cannot withstand time. That night, Obama's home was quieter than ever. He sat on the old couch where Michelle used to lean on his shoulder during late-night movie marathons. Now, only a cold emptiness remained. On the table, a cup of tea still held a trace of warmth. In front of him was a handwritten letter Michelle had left before she departed. Obama skimmed the familiar handwriting. There was no blame, no resentment, just gentle words and a final sentence that made his heart ache. Barack, we've come a long way together. But now, it's time for us to learn how to walk alone. Outside, the city lights still shone brightly. But for Obama, darkness had enveloped his heart. Obama had never feared solitude. For years, he had grown accustomed to moments alone, whether in the quiet of the Oval Office after a long day or on cross-continental flights with only dim lights and the hum of the engine for company. But this was the first time he felt loneliness in this way, a void that couldn't be filled. The first morning after Michelle left, Obama woke up early as usual. Pale light filtered through the window, but there was no aroma of coffee wafting from the kitchen or the soft jazz music Michelle used to play every morning. Only silence. He walked downstairs and glanced around the kitchen. Michelle's favorite mug still sat on the shelf. A half-finished bottle of wine from the night before remained on the table, but he didn't touch it. He wasn't the type to drown his sorrows in alcohol. Instead, he put on his workout clothes and went for a run. The crisp autumn air of Washington cut through his skin but did little to ease the heaviness in his mind. Along the quiet path, memories flooded back, the morning runs with Michelle in Chicago when they were young, the silent hand-holding after stressful days, the evenings on the White House balcony, just stargazing and savoring rare moments of peace amidst the chaos of politics. Now, it was just him, running alone. When he returned home, he checked his phone. A text from Sasha. "Dad, are you okay?" Obama smiled faintly. His two daughters, Malia and Sasha, were grown, living their own lives, but he knew they were worried. Not just about the divorce, but because they understood that even the strongest man could be deeply wounded by losing a partner of over 3 decades. He typed a quick reply, "I'm fine, sweetheart. Don't worry." But as he hit send, he realized he wasn't entirely convinced himself. The days that followed passed in an unfamiliar rhythm. Obama continued his work, speeches, community projects, meetings with young leaders he still inspired. But those close to him noticed a change. Even when surrounded by thousands, he carried a loneliness he had never known before. One late afternoon, he sat in his office, staring at an old photo on his desk. It was from 1992, his wedding day. He remembered it vividly, Michelle's radiant smile, his own hopeful eyes. They had the world in their hands. And now, that world had changed forever. As night fell, he decided to go out. No security, no fanfare, just a man walking alone on the streets he and Michelle once strolled together. He stopped at a small cafe, a place where they had spent hours talking about dreams, the future, and what they wanted to do for the world. He stepped inside, ordered a black coffee, and sat in the familiar corner. An elderly couple sat at the next table, holding hands, quietly enjoying their dinner. Obama watched them, then looked down at his own hand, empty. For the first time in months, he felt a profound sadness that even the toughest years in politics couldn't compare to. He was used to fighting, to solving the world's biggest problems. But how do you mend a broken heart? Outside, a gentle breeze carried fallen leaves along the sidewalk. Life went on, and Obama knew he had to keep moving forward, even if no one was holding his hand on the path ahead. Time passed, but the emptiness clung to Obama like a shadow. The days without Michelle felt like a new lesson in change, something even his presidency hadn't fully prepared him for. Still, he didn't let himself dwell on the loss for too long. He always believed life was a series of chapters, and when one closed, another would open. But this chapter, a chapter about a single man in his 60s, after 30 years with the woman he loved, was hard to write. One evening, Obama sat on his home balcony, sipping red wine, his eyes following the city lights twinkling in the distance. From afar, the hum of traffic and the laughter of young people from a nearby bar reached his ears. He remembered his early days as a young man in Chicago, when life was full of surprises, when every new day was an opportunity to conquer the world. But now, his world was different. His phone buzzed. A text from an old friend, Elena Martinez, his longtime confidant and advisor. "Barack, there's a small gathering this weekend. You should come, it'll be good for you." Obama hesitated. Since the divorce, he had avoided unnecessary social gatherings. Not because he feared prying eyes or curious questions, but because he wasn't sure he was ready to step out into the world as a single man, no longer with Michelle Obama by his side. But he decided to go. On Saturday night, he drove to a small restaurant in the city center, where old friends were waiting. When he walked in, he quickly noticed something. People still looked at him the same way, but there was something different in their eyes. Perhaps it was sympathy, curiosity, or simply respect for a man learning to walk alone. They talked, laughed, and reminisced. But even surrounded by his closest friends, Obama felt a void. No one could replace Michelle. After dinner, as everyone left, Obama decided to take a walk. He strolled through familiar streets, each corner holding a piece of his memories. When he passed a park, he suddenly stopped. On a bench, an elderly woman sat alone, her gaze fixed on the night sky. Obama slowly approached and gently asked, "Do you mind if I join you?" The woman looked up and smiled. "Of course not, Mr. Obama." He was slightly surprised but not shocked. Even years after leaving the White House, his face was still familiar to many. They sat in comfortable silence. After a while, the woman spoke. "I was married for over 40 years. My husband passed away last year. She paused, taking a deep breath. Losing a partner isn't just losing someone you love, it's losing a part of yourself. Obama nodded. I understand. The woman turned to him. But you know what? We still have a life to live. There are still things to love, to explore, to feel. Her words resonated like a reminder. Obama smiled, feeling a slight lightness in his heart for the first time in months. Life went on. And so would he. A new chapter, Elena and Sasha. In the weeks that followed, Obama began to rebuild his life. He reconnected with old friends, including Elena Martinez, who had been a trusted advisor during his presidency. Elena was sharp, witty, and fiercely loyal, but there was one person who wasn't thrilled about her presence in Obama's life: Sasha. Sasha had always been protective of her father, especially after the divorce. She didn't trust Elena at first, seeing her as someone who might take advantage of her father's vulnerability. Dad, I don't know about her, Sasha said one evening over dinner. She seems too involved. Obama chuckled. Elena's been a friend for years, Sasha. She's just trying to help. But Sasha wasn't convinced. She kept her distance, her skepticism evident whenever Elena was around. One weekend, Obama invited Elena to join him and his daughters for a casual lunch. Sasha was polite but reserved, her answers short and her smiles forced. Elena, however, didn't seem fazed. She engaged Malia in conversation about her work and even cracked a few jokes that made Obama laugh. As the weeks passed, Sasha began to notice something. Elena genuinely cared about her father. She wasn't trying to replace Michelle or insert herself into their family. Instead, she was a steady presence, someone who listened and offered support without overstepping. One evening, Sasha decided to give Elena a chance. She approached her after dinner and said, "I'm sorry if I've been cold. It's been hard." Elena smiled warmly. "I understand, Sasha. I'm not here to replace anyone. I just want to be there for your dad, and for you and Malia, if you'll let me." From that moment, the tension began to ease. Sasha and Elena started talking more, sharing stories and even bonding over their mutual love of music. Slowly but surely, they grew closer, and Sasha realized that Elena wasn't a threat, she was an ally. Moving forward. In the days after his encounter with the woman in the park, Obama began to see life from a different perspective. He realized that even with loss, even with voids that couldn't be filled, life continued, and he couldn't just sit and wait for time to heal his wounds. One morning, as soft sunlight filtered through the curtains, Obama decided to do something he had postponed for months: return to his work of inspiring others. He opened his laptop and looked at the list of speaking invitations his assistant had sent. One stood out, a request from a high school in Chicago, a place he had visited during his presidency. After a moment of thought, he texted his assistant, "Confirm the Chicago talk." 3 days later, Obama stood before an auditorium full of eager young faces. He spoke about his journey, the challenges, the mistakes, and the hard-earned lessons. But this time, his speech felt different. It wasn't just the story of a leader, but of a man who had experienced loss, loneliness, and was learning to rise from it. After the talk, a teenage boy approached him. The boy, around 16, had bright eyes but a hint of sadness. He hesitated, then asked, "Mr. Obama, how do you move on after losing someone you love?" Obama looked at him, recognizing the pain the boy was trying to hide. He gently asked, "Have you lost someone important?" The boy nodded. "My dad passed away 6 months ago. He always told me I could do anything. But since he's been gone, I feel like I can't do anything." Obama was silent for a moment. Then he spoke, his voice warm and steady. "I understand that feeling. When someone leaves, they leave a void that nothing can fill. But you know what? They also leave behind the best parts of themselves, their love, their teachings, their lessons. Your dad believed you could do anything. And the best way to keep him close is to prove him right. The boy was silent, then nodded slightly. In his eyes, there was a small spark of determination that hadn't been there before. After the event, as Obama stepped outside, he looked up at the Chicago sky. A gentle breeze carried the chill of autumn. He smiled. Perhaps not all losses were endings. Sometimes, they were just new beginnings, a different journey to find oneself again. In the days after his trip to Chicago, Obama felt a little lighter. His conversation with the boy had left a profound impact, a realization that even in his own loss, there were still people who needed his words, his experiences, and his guidance. One evening, as he sat in his home library, his phone buzzed. A text from Aaliyah. "Dad, are you free this weekend? Sasha and I want to have dinner with you." Obama smiled. He knew his daughters were trying to pull him out of his long days of reflection. He replied immediately, "Of course. I'm always free for you too." On Saturday night, he arrived at the small restaurant his daughters had chosen. When he walked in, he saw Malia and Sasha waiting, both glowing. But as he looked closer, he noticed something in their eyes that he couldn't ignore: concern. After ordering, Sasha placed her hand on the table and looked straight at him. "Dad, we need to have a serious talk." Obama raised an eyebrow, smiling slightly. "All right. What's on your mind?" Malia took a deep breath before speaking. "Dad, are you really okay? I mean, you've been through so much. And I know you're strong, but you don't have to pretend you're not grieving." Obama fell silent. He looked into the concerned eyes of his daughters and realized they had seen through the emotions he had tried to hide for so long. He exhaled slowly and said, "I know. I've been trying to act like I'm okay, but the truth is, I'm not always okay. I miss your mom. I miss our family the way it used to be. And sometimes, I feel like I failed." Malia shook her head immediately. "No, you've never failed. You and Mom had the best years together. But sometimes, things don't go the way we want. And what matters is that you're still our dad. We don't want you to be lonely." Sasha smiled softly, then joked, "Besides, you're Barack Obama. I'm sure there are plenty of people out there who'd love to date you." Obama laughed. "Oh, what are you implying?" The three of them laughed, and in that moment, Obama felt a warmth spread through his heart. Even though their family had changed, the love they shared remained intact. The dinner ended with laughter, stories, and memories of the past. As they stepped out of the restaurant, the night breeze carried a gentle chill. Obama draped his arms over Sasha and Malia's shoulders, walking slowly down the bustling street. For the first time in a long while, he felt truly not alone. In the days after the dinner with Malia and Sasha, Obama gradually found balance in his life. He spent more time meeting friends, reading, writing, and occasionally appearing at community events. But even as he tried to fill the void with meaningful activities, there were still long nights when the house felt too quiet, and he felt the absence of something irreplaceable. One morning, as he sipped coffee on his porch, his phone buzzed. "Hey Barack, long time no see." Obama immediately recognized the voice. It was Elena Martinez, his longtime friend and advisor. "Elena, I'm guessing you're not just calling to say hi?" He chuckled lightly, leaning back in his chair. "You're right," she said playfully. "There's a fundraiser next week for schools in Chicago. It's a small event, but there are some interesting people. I think you should come. It'll be good for you." Obama paused, then nodded. "Maybe I should. Send me the details." And so, a week later, he returned to Chicago, the city that had witnessed his journey from a passionate young man to one of the most powerful leaders in the world. But this time, he wasn't a politician, not a president, just a man searching for new meaning after loss. As he stepped into the event, he was quickly drawn into conversations. People greeted him with respect, but no one made him feel like a statesman or an icon, just an old friend coming home. Amidst the laughter and music filling the room, Obama noticed a woman standing not far away, talking to a group of teachers. She had a warm smile and sharp eyes, exuding confidence and intelligence. There was something about her that made him look twice. Elena appeared beside him, smiling softly. That's Celeste Turner. She's a sociology professor, used to work in education policy. A smart woman with a big heart. Obama raised an eyebrow. Elena, what are you up to? She shrugged with a hint of mischief. Just thought you two should talk. And before he could respond, Elena waved Celeste over. Celeste, let me introduce you to an old friend. Obama smiled, stepping forward, and in that moment, he realized his journey wasn't over. It was just beginning a new chapter.